Ladies and gentlemen, cool. There we go, there we go, there we go. Come up, come up, come up, come up, come up, guys. Come on, come on. Let's join. Waiting for people to join. We had to just restart this. I had issues with my internet, but we are back. The evil people trying to stop us from speaking tonight about this very critical topic that you see in the thumbnail. Come on, waiting for a couple of people to join. Waiting for a couple of people to join. Yep, it's take two. Like I said, there was internet issues rather, in my last little live that I just did a few minutes ago. So we're starting again. Let's join, guys. Let's join, guys. Let's join, guys. The numbers are picking up. I can see the numbers picking up. I'm just waiting for the numbers to really pick up. So don't leave because that's when we're going to talk. Just need at least a couple of people. Then we can start talking and we can delve into some of these critical issues that we are facing as a country. Yep, the numbers are going up. Thank you. Continue joining, guys. Continue joining. Continue joining. I see people are joining, which is good. Want people to join. Keep joining, guys. Join, 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 join. And then, yeah, like I said, today's topic will be on, racism and how that is really killing uh, the fabric of South Africa. South Africa is a country with so much potential, but because of its illiterate, racist leaders, we are being held back. So, yep, I see Philip Mayer. Hear you, meneer. Dankie, dankie. Thank you that you can hear me. See people are joining. The numbers are jumping a little bit. That's good to see. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's no secret that our good friends from the West have sent President Cyril Ramaphosa a very beautiful letter, which was the letter regarding tariffs. Now, you'll remember that we're not only dealing with tariffs here, there's also the issue of, pardon me, there's the issue of sanctions on these separate leaders, right? Don't forget that there's also the issue of sanctions. And there's a bill that is before Congress at the moment. Remind you, the Republicans have got a majority, right? So there's a bill before Congress there set by Greg Stubbe, which basically is the Anti-Trading South African Bull Act, blah, 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 blah. You know these things. So it's still being proposed before Congress. We'll see how the congressmen vote on that bill. But basically, inside that bill, what it entails sanctions that the US government can put on various leaders that have got an anti-Western appeal or an anti-Semitic view on things, as well as it's got, a clause written within that it gives the US government a right to put sanctions on the South African government. And one of the funny things someone told me today was this would be the second time South Africa faces the risk of sanctions, right? It's the second time facing the risk of sanctions because of racial issues. One was during apartheid, and the second being now. So that is actually in the works from the US State Department, where they are working on that. And the funniest thing is on the sanctions list, I can tell you which countries are there, right? Now, South Africa, if I'm not mistaken, subject to correction, we are the only African country on that list. If I'm not mistaken, I just need to double check, but I know that countries like Iran are there, the fake state of Palestine is there. You go on and on and on. It's not a beautiful list to be on, right? It really isn't a beautiful list to be on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see if that list does pass through, but it has got a number of implications for South African politics. And what do I mean about implications for South African politics? Basically, now we're getting to a point where the communists and this racist cabal of the ANC, EFF, MK will be pushed against the wall, and they could go all out extreme if this does come in because they end up having nothing to defend. Don't forget that these guys send their kids to Western countries. They don't send their kids to China or to Russia to go and study. You'll find the child somewhere in Atlanta in the USA. You'll find someone. So this has got many implications for the people um, that are from these parties. So there's going to be a target on various leaders. I've actually written down a couple of notes for you guys, and I wanted to write down notes because I've got a thing of when I start speaking, I sometimes lose my points, especially if I'm not looking at my notes. Um, and I've got a very important point that I've researched, that I've spoken to a couple of people about. Like I told you, we had a great conversation with the US acting ambassador. We also had a good one. I mean, the German ambassador was there. So I had very good conversations with Western leaders to sort of gauge where their perspectives are regarding South Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, you'll remember that Corne Mulder and a group of 4 Afrikaners went off to the US. We've discussed that trip in length. I believe a number of podcasters have discussed that trip. Now, they came back with 4 conditions. Now, remember, one of the conditions, the ANC need to denounce the Kill the Boer song. That was one of the conditions, which we know that our president, in his infinite wisdom, told Donald Trump. He said to Donald Trump when he was at the White House in that embarrassing meeting, he said, people will no longer sing the song. People are no longer allowed to, sing the song. He went on and on telling us about why people cannot sing the song. And as soon as he touched back in South Africa, he went on to say, yeah, people can sing the song. It's a struggle song. So basically, you saw a guy being so contradictory, just going back into his foolishness of just being a contradictory fool. That's what he is. He's a fool that plays for the crowd. That's what our president is. Now, he gets there and he says that the rubbish that he has to say about the United States of America as soon as he comes back, saying that the US will not meddle in South African democracy, and this is supposedly where we live. It's not a dictatorship, and basically the White House can't tell us what to do. That was Ramaphosa's speech as soon as he touched down. You can go and check it for yourself. As soon as he touched down from the US. Now, one has got to ask the question. Ramaphosa is a guy that says what you want to hear, but does not do what you want to do. He's the guy that can meet with a group of Afrikaners today and denounce the Kill the Boer song. And then as soon as it comes to campaigning period, elections, and the rest, he'll be singing that song. He'll be jumping for joy, jumping like a popcorn, going mad. So these are the leaders that we have, hypocritical leaders, and Trump is calling them out with these tariffs, with these bills, with every single little thing that he's introduced. With every single little thing. Don't forget, as I was saying, the other condition was you need to stop EWC. And it's tricky to see how on earth will Ramaphosa stop EWC. And why I'm saying, I'm not a fan of EWC. You all know that by now. I'm not a fan of EWC. It's one of those policies that I'm just so vehemently against because all it does is just to steal, 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 steal. And Donald Trump has come out to say, President Ramaphosa, you need to denounce EWC if you want us to have a relook at the tariffs. And these things are so simple. The cancelling of the tariffs for South Africa are such a simple thing, but the ANC won't do. The third one had to do with don't put BEE on American companies. That don't, what do you call it? Don't subject American companies to this form of tax. Now, the interesting thing that many people don't know, because many people are coming out and saying that South America is so unfair with tariffs. And I've heard these narratives on legacy media houses, from radio stations and the rest. Now, you need to understand, where do these tariffs actually come from? Right? You need to actually understand, where do they stem from. Number one, you need to remember that South Africa has actually been putting tariffs on the US, while the US actually had a go with us, where they did not put tariffs on us for a very long time. And outside of tariffs, we also subjected them to local tariffs, which are things like BEE, that they had to deal with. Now, for the Americans, they are left with this big question, right? Because don't forget, we allowed the Chinese to come to South Africa, and the racist government said that the Chinese classify as black people, therefore they qualify for BEE, therefore they don't need to really put in real black people. Understand that. The same for Indians, right? The same for Indians. So all these guys from the East come to South Africa, they qualify for BEE, they qualify to do business smoothly in South Africa, with very little red tape for the Eastern guys, for the East, for the Chinese, for the Indians. There's very little red tape for them. Now, the difference is the Americans are white people. And the most shocking thing, right, that you've just got to sit and understand here is, I never knew that Chinese people were native to South Africa and somehow they qualify for BEE. I didn't know that there were lots of Chinese around during apartheid for them to be previously disadvantaged and qualify for BEE. I mean, I'm shocked. We have to ask the government. BEE is a crap policy on its own, right? But what's more crap is the fact that Chinese qualify. And you ask yourself, all the white people, right, that have gone through the Anglo-Boer War, that have gone through traveling from Pretoria through the Lydenburg train track strip, from Ermelo to Nelspruit to building railroads and, the Afrikaner versus English, Cape Dutch colony, all these things. White people have been in South Africa for close to 500 years. And somehow you still don't regard them as African. And then you regard Chinese that don't believe in human rights at all, don't believe in democracy, are not Christian, don't have the same values that we have, don't have the same way of living that we have. They qualify to receive government handouts. They qualify to do business freely. And Trump saw this, and Trump said, to hell with this. I'm not going to allow this crap to continue, which makes sense. I mean, you can't. You cannot fathom how on earth the Chinese get a get out of jail free card and somehow white people, they're not even Africans. Supposedly they're Europeans, according to the government. According to the government. Right. Right. That's the racist ANC for you. And Trump called them out. Trump called them out. And I'm glad that this man called them out. Because it was getting crazy. Even black people were subjected to unfortunate BEE policies of working with people that you don't want to work with. So this was not helping anyone at all. And we're still going on these four, issues that, Donald Trump, the White House sent to Corne Mulder and his crew, that they related to South Africa right now. Obviously, these four issues are very easy to resolve outside of EWC, because EWC is actually a law that has been signed. But for the rest, it's really easy stuff to do. The ANC can come out and say, we condemn the song. Because remember, the White House said the ANC should condemn the song. So that's what the White House said, right? The ANC is not going to come out. Because there's one thing that we know about the ANC. They are not good at taking accountability for what they do. There's one thing about those guys. They will never come and say, we were wrong. You listen to Floyd, not Floyd Shivambu, sorry, to Figle Mbalula. Figle Mbalula this week alone, right, said something so interesting. He said the ANC is no longer going to defend corrupt members. Okay, that's another statement that we'll argue right now. But he goes on to speak about they defended a fire pool, right, and calling it a swimming pool for Zuma's tenure. Now, understand this very well. He's still not taking accountability. Why doesn't he come out and say, we lied? Why are you saying we defended? Why are you not admitting to the fact that you lied? You betrayed the people of South Africa. You protected a corrupt man. You protected a crook. You protected a racist. You protected a tribalist. That's what they did. That is what they did. But no, he will not come out and say that. That's not ANC style. That's not what they do. That is too much for them. You're asking them for more than their pay grade. For them, the only thing they can say was, yes, we defended him, but we're no longer going to do that. Now, it's crap for them to say that they're no longer going to defend people. You know why? How many white people have gone to jail for racism in post-apartheid era? How many white people have gone to jail for racism, right? And have faced legal issues? Many. We can list them on and on and on. Others even faced issues at times where you would not even, if you look outside race, you just understand that maybe it was in the heat of the moment, right? It was in the heat of the moment where something was said. But when Julius Malema purposely, it's not even in the heat of the moment, purposely sings a song about racism, sings a song about killing, about wanting your blood, they don't face any trials. They don't face any punishment. They don't face anything. Speak about double standards. Speak about double standards. That is what's happening in South Africa. I just want to put a little goal here on the comments for you guys. There you go. As you can see, I've posted the goal. Now, as I continue, people will not know this, but there's a councillor in the city of Tshwane. I won't even say allegedly because I was there. I was still active in party politics during that point in time, right? I was there. I saw it I heard it with my ears. I saw it with my own eyes, right? Now, this councillor was from the EFF and he's the lead of the EFF in the city of Tshwane, right? Now, and that was when Elias Brink was still the mayor of Tshwane, right? Now, this councillor from the EFF says, and I want to say what he said. He says, today I want to taste the blood of a boer. That's what he says. That's the crap that he says. He says, today I want to taste the blood of a boer. He says, today I want the blood of an Afrikaner. That's what he said today. Not today as in today, but that's what he said a few months ago when Silas Brink was still the mayor. That is what he said. The DA to take the case to court, that issue to court, right? They tried to take the issue to court, including VF Plus, including the South African Human Rights Commission, which I don't like. I don't like the SAHRC, personally, for my own reasons. But cool, kudos. I agree about taking the guy to court. Today, the guy is scot-free. Nothing is said. Nothing is done about him. He did not even face a salary ban or dock for 1 month. Nothing. In fact, the guy was promoted from being an ordinary councillor to being MC for environment. He was promoted. They said, congrats, we love you. You are a real racist. You're a real comrade. Here's your gold star. You are now an MMC. Congrats, my boy. That's what they did with him. That is what they did. Promoting racism. That's what we saw. And no one calls that out. No one calls it out. It happened. Where someone says, I want the blood of an Afrikaner. No one calls that out. And if you think it ends there, wait, hang on a minute. Let me give you another story. Go to city of Johannesburg. City of Johannesburg, there's a Jewish councillor, right, belonging to the DA. The Jewish councillor basically says, speaks about Israel and was coming out against the nonsense that the ANC wanted to do at that time, which was to rename the Stanton Drive to Leila Khalid Drive, right? And obviously, purposely doing it because the U.S. consulate, Johannesburg consulate, is there for obvious reasons. Now, they came out, they said free Palestine during his speech. Mind you, he's not even speaking about Israel. He's speaking about his own thing. The thing that he only has his kippah on his head or his skull cap, if you didn't know that the Hebrew word is kippah or kippot. No. He has that. He's got his little Israel, scarf around him. And the poor soul has got free Palestine talks. And after having free Palestine talks, people within the council start mocking him for being Jewish. They start saying, there's no space for you, Zionist. Get out of here, you Jew. Go back to Israel. That's what they are saying. That is what they are saying. It was a live council meeting where someone was put to shame for being Jewish. And what happened? What happened? What happened? Nothing. Nothing. Oh, and you think it ends there. Let's take the story to Nelson Mandela Bay, where a black councillor by the name of Andile Lungisa, another fool, a twat from the ANC, who was, what do you call it, a councillor at the point in time. I'm not sure if he's still a councillor. Hope he's not. Hope the idiot is somewhere rotting in his house. So, as he was a councillor, there was a huge fight in council, right? He took a jug. You can go and search the story for yourself. Took a jug and hit a white councillor. Now, the interesting thing is the white councillor forgave him, right? The white councillor forgave him. The story ended there. Now, you ask yourself, if roles were turned around, let's say the white councillor hit Andile Lungisa, this racist councillor, clearly. Would Andile Lungisa have forgiven him? That's the question. Would Andile Lungisa have forgiven him? Or is it just, when it comes to racial issues, it only works in one direction? I mean, you've got celebrities, right? Like Nsiki Mazwai, who say that if you are black, you can't be racist. I've heard this narrative before. People saying, if you are black, you can't be racist. It's the most stupid narrative on earth. It's bull. I even hear party members, I need to highlight, party members from parties such as Rise Mzansi, such as Action SA, that will say, if you're black, you can't be racist. That's what they say. And you get the shock of your life that, my word, you get really the shock of your life that what is the level of thinking with some of these people? Like, you have to be special to have this poor thinking that some people have in this country. And I don't want to be that guy that behaves as if I don't know that I'm black. I do know that I'm black. It's cool. But one thing that I'm not going to do is going to sit down and watch people being unfairly attacked and watch double standards and watch hypocrites. They've got long speeches about fighting apartheid and about ending racism, and then they are still racist towards other people, and racist towards, in most cases, racist towards people that were not even alive during apartheid. They were not even there. They did not exist in some cases. You've got dynamics and targets that are set against white people. They can't access the economy. because of this racist government. They can't. And I'm glad that Trump is calling it out. I'm glad that the Western world has finally woken up to this madness that is going on. You know, it is crazy. You ask yourself that what is wrong with our leaders? Can our leaders not get the concept of race out of their thick skulls? I mean, South Africa is going to experience tariffs, is going to experience possible sanctions because of racial issues. Simple things. Simple thing of just coming out and denouncing, say, please, man, stop singing the old song. Just stop it. Why? Why? Why on earth do we have to kill an economy because of our arrogance and this belief that one day the US will fall and China will rise out of wherever and Russia will be the super great power? I don't know. Maybe I live in my separate world where, you know, I'm in reality and the ANC live in a Disney movie. Now, you'll remember that during apartheid, P.W. Botha made a speech, right, in Durban, right, where it was a possible there were possibilities before it actually happened, possibilities of the U.S. government at that point in time putting sanctions on South Africa. That means, well, they would do it by withdrawing trade and by doing a couple of things because of apartheid. It's a whole another issue, right? Now, remember that P.W. Boyd at that point in time drew a line, right? Drew um drew a line. And he said something about not crossing a Rubik River or blah 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 blah. For those of you who were there during the time, you will remember that speech. A very important speech, right? Which I also got to hear, I also heard today. Now, after that, the US realized after pulling out investment, that okay, you've pushed South Africa to a certain point, right, at that point in time. But what did the US do? The US government realized that okay, we've got one up on South Africa. They said, they said, you need to give us back the money that you owe us. And remember that during apartheid days, South Africa's debt was very low. It was extremely low. It was close to it was very low. But that put the South African government at that point in time in a frenzy, right? It put them in a frenzy because no one is ordinarily ready to pay back money they were never ready to pay back, right? So this is an old case of you and your friend have got an argument and you keep on talking crap about your friend and then your friend reminds you, but pay me back my money. Then all of a sudden you stop talking crap because you remember, oh, got to pay back this guy. Now, take this back to present day, right? And I foresee this thing happening again, where the Donald Trump administration will obviously start with the tariffs as they started with. Tariffs are on, they're going. Cool, set. Now, the next action or the next point of action for Donald Trump to do is he's going to assess the ANC. Does the ANC fold? Uh, you know, by then, or does he, or do they, become a Western part? Like, do they fold because of these tariffs, or do they just continue with China? Now, that's the big question that Donald Trump is still going to wait to see, right? Now, uh, um, sorry, just lost my thought there, as I was saying. But the big thing is Donald Trump could pull a very dangerous card. He's got a very dangerous card that he could pull and surprise Ramaphosa with, right? Which is President Ramaphosa, pay back all your debt that you owe to America, as in now. That is going to kill South Africa. That is going to kill South Africa. Believe me when I tell you, that is going to kill South Africa. It's really going to sink this economy, and there'll be nothing left because remember, South Africa's debt with the US goes into the crazy billions. Billions, we don't even have money to employ people, let alone manage our cities and metros, infrastructure. We don't even have money for clean water. And Donald Trump has got an ace up his sleeve where he could say, you owe us money, you racist buffoons, and I've put tariffs on you. You are still racist, right? You still somehow believe that China is the way. So instead of, you know, just leaving things as is, what do? Simple. We go and demand that you pay back your debt. That is going to be the end of South Africa. I promise you. That will be the end. And you'll probably call me a clairvoyant after this. You'll say, Kutle, you've got powers to see the future. You'll think that I've got clairvoyant powers after this. Because that is what Trump will do with his administration, is to sanction the leaders and to demand that South Africa starts paying back the debt. You should read those letters that Trump has sent out to President Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as to what's his name? To President Lula of Brazil, right? Those letters are very clear. They mention one thing. They say the unfair trading agreement that we have had with you guys, right? So the US says we have had an unfair trading agreement with South Africa in the past. They also said the same for Brazil. Now, for someone who has had an unfair trading agreement, it doesn't take a lot for them to say, give us back the money that you owe us. It really doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't take them being a rocket scientist to say this. They could just make the call and say, guys, you owe us X, Y, Z amount of billions of dollars. Give us back the money as in now, or else we're lighting up this place. And racist, spineless, useless Rama Pala is going to shake in his boots. That is where South Africa is going to with the US. But yes, again, the president does, and when I say the president, I'm referring to Ramaphosa and his infinite wisdom, he does have a second option, right? There's another option for him to deal with these tariffs that will be coming. Now, the option is he tries to play the attacking game with President Donald Trump. And what do I mean by the attacking game? The attacking game could be basically, we'll see how far each of us can go to a certain point where one will eventually have to fall off the cliff, right? It really does happen. So basically, it could be a thing of where, and I've heard the rumors. Now you're hearing it here first as well, where President Ramaphosa is allegedly considering raising tariffs on the US in response to what they have done to South Africa, right? That he's allegedly planning on raising tariffs to the US. Now, before I break that idea a little bit more into detail, understand this. So basically, it's going to be a thing of, let's say, Ramaphosa says we're raising the tariffs by 20% on you guys, Maybe he's trying to become a stubborn twat, towards Trump and seem like this arrogant leader who is standing strong on what he says. That's where Ramaphosa might go to, and that's what I am hearing. Now, read Trump's letter very well. Read it very well. And I've had a conversation with a couple of people from the White House where they stated one very important thing. They said, any tariffs that South Africa had as of today to the Americans will reciprocate that. They will return the favor to South Africa. Yes. So if we add 20%, they will put 20% on top of our 30 plus 10%, therefore taking it to 60%. That is possible. And that is what the Americans are saying. Get ready for. Get ready for that. As I was saying, so Ramaphosa can play the game of let's go far. Ramaphosa could also do something very crazy, even though we know him to be a weak president, right? And the only shocking and well, it's strong but wrong thing that he did, which was firing Andrew Whitfield. It was shocking for him to actually make a decision for the first time in his life. He made a decision and just fired someone, and that decision happened to open up a bigger can of worms for him. I can tell you now, if Ramaphosa could replay time or rewind, he would go back and not fire Andrew Whitfield. Right? Story for another day. But Ramaphosa has got a card where he can say, cool, you've put tariffs on South Africa. I'm going to put 500% tariffs on the US. Now Trump looks at this, right? When he says you're going to put it's a hypothetical example. Understand it for what it is. Hypothetical example. Where some leaders do opt for that crazy option, right? Where he says, I'll put 500% tariffs, right? Just to irritate the hell out of Trump. Trump doesn't mind. Trump will say, I'm adding 500% on South Africa. That is the end of South Africa. That is blatantly the end of trade. That is the end. Done with. Now, South Africa faces a very big question, a very huge, pertinent question, which is now that the US has pulled out of, trading at a duty-free rate with South African markets, where are our South African markets going to sell to? That is a very important question. Because one has to remember that the Western world is very much aligned to the South African lifestyle versus the Eastern world, right? I'm sure you understand that. As to say that the Western world is a Judeo-Christian area. They eat similar food to what we eat, They've got barbecues, we've got braais, Judeo-Christian, The Eastern world is far from what we are. They are not, number one, they don't believe in democracy. They've got Sharia law in some of these Islamic countries. And they've got their own way of doing things in the East, right? They don't do half the things we do. They don't believe in minimum wage, which is already crap on its own. Don't believe in democracy. They don't consume the things that we consume. So how on earth is South Africa considering the East as a better option to trade with? It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. It doesn't. This is like trying to sell snookfish to Zimbabweans, while Zimbabweans don't eat snookfish. Like, why? Why on earth? But hey, only the ANC know. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not ending the video, but I just want to bring your attention to something. I've set a goal on the chat, as you can see. The goal is people to, 14 Rand, which is just going to go towards supporting the channel and the work that we do here. Please do just have a look at the goal and support the goal. Now, going back to what I was saying, is the ANC have got no idea of where is South Africa going to. They've got absolutely no idea as to where this country is going to. They don't know who are the future trading partners, because I'll tell you what, the US is pulling out already. South African government is going to call China, right? They'll call China, it's going to happen. And as soon as Beijing answer, they'll tell Ramaphosa that, President Xi is busy at the moment. You can't take your call. Perhaps could you leave a message? and that message will never be answered. Because don't forget, China are not in on South Africa's stupidity. The Chinese don't even like BEE themselves. If you think the Americans hate BEE, go check the Chinese. An interesting thing was the Chinese did not even attend this past week's BRICS summit to already show that, well, they're not as committed as the South Africans think they are. Not at all. Not at all. So the ANC government are in a la la land. They don't realize that the vast majority of the world has moved on. Those days where people used to die for an ideology were during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. We used to have Stalin, Leningrad, and all those places in the Soviet Union where people would die for an ideology. No matter even if the economy was in tatters, people were ready to, hang their flag to the mast and die for, you know, their ideology. Now, that's not what's happening currently. You've got a Chinese Communist Party which understands trade way better than many capitalists, right? And you still have the EFF and Mkhonto Sizwe calling these guys communist. It's, it's fascinating. It's its own thing, fascinating. You've got the Brazilians, which don't want to be involved in BRICS. In fact, the Brazilian population, and I'm not talking about the Brazilian president, there's a difference now. Brazil is similar to South Africa in terms of the population wants to go one direction, but the politicians see it fit to go another direction. The only guy who believes in BRICS in Brazil is President Lula, but no one else does. Absolutely no one else does. And to think that you can ditch the United States and somehow thrive is a very foolish concept. It's a very foolish concept that is not going to work. The trick is with BRICS, right? BRICS is this organization which was thought of by an English guy, right, from England, who initially thought of the idea as BRIC. He put it as a group of countries that were seen to become major economies, right? Now, the trick with BRICS or BRIC, right, is let's take it like this. Let's say myself and a friend of mine, we start a little podcast collaboration, right? So a very strong friend of mine, let's say he comes along with his numbers, I come with my numbers. We have a strong message going out to the people. The people resonate with this message. And I'm explaining the idea behind BRICS and why its failure is imminent. Right? Now we've all got this ideology that will do this. Now, this friend of mine in particular says to me, Kuhle, look, man, hey, there's this other cousin of mine, he's not as strong as us, but he's into what we're doing, He's into what we're doing. I think he's a useful idiot, he's a useful idiot, right? And I want him to join our little podcast party. That is what South Africa is in BRICS. I mean, the concept of BRIC before BRICS made sense because you had Brazil, Russia, India, China. You had number one, you had the economic power of China. You had the not really, we used to call it the military power of Russia. But now Russia was the second best army in the world. Now it's the second best army in Ukraine, right? And well, that's because they've still not dealt with the small country next to them. And then you've got India, right, which comes with the technology, economic power, the population, the skills, the entrepreneurial spirit in BRIC. You've got Brazil, which has got a relatively large economy, right? A couple of 100 million people. And then all of a sudden, South Africa is brought. And South Africa is that guy in the corner that's just like a watered down guy, And you just you just realize that South Africa is the useful idiot in this group of people, right? And that's where BRICS goes to. And then to make matters worse, we get what we call BRICS Plus, right? Which is the new form of BRICS. It's how BRICS has sort of, revamped itself. Now, and what do you call it? Now, with this BRICS revamping itself, with this BRICS Plus, you've got, the Iranians there, you've got the Ethiopians there. Now, what you have here, which is why I actually mentioned this in the first place, is you've got the anti-allied world coming into, well, coming together, right? Where they are sort of trying to form a formation. You remember that during the Cold War, you had the USSR, which led the communist world with Cuba and the rest, and then you just had the West, right, which was capitalist, right? And then in between these two sort of superpowers at that point in time, you had the anti-aligned countries, which happen to be the countries that have joined BRICS. So I hope you see my trail of thought and you see where I'm going with this. So South Africa betting on BRICS is not a safe bet. It's a very dangerous bet. It's a bet that, trust me, will never pay off. Because let's just look at empires in the past. Empires come and go. That's the nature of life. There's the prediction that America's dominance is going to come to an end. Therefore, ANC, you can continue being racist. The Chinese won't mind. Life will be hunky-dory. And that's not true. Because all empires, well, majority of empires, rather not all, majority of empires have come from Western countries. The Brits handed over their empire to an Anglo-Saxon America, right? Now, that's still the West. So whatever the ANC is thinking about, thinking that one day, South Africa will rise with communist China. And I highlight communist, in inverted brackets. And, Russia will be the superpower that will take over the world. And South Africa is now this giant, we're a giant by virtue of association, is a facade. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It will never happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it regarding BRICS per se. And just want to head back to my notes just to see that where's my next point going to. So yes, let's explain some of these things to you guys. I just want to make sure that you've got a deep understanding of Trump's tariffs and understand it for what it is, right? And as I said, I just wanted to get my notes for you guys. So basically, Trump has instituted, sweeping tariffs as part of his second term, employing the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is one of the acts that Trump signed, one of those bills that he just signed. So it's based, this International Emergency Economic Powers Act, acronym is IEEPA, has to deal with baseline and reciprocal tariffs. So in April 2025, a 10% baseline tariff was enacted globally, not just South Africa, with higher launches for countries with large US trade deficits, i.e. South Africa. Hope you're still going with me. I hope you're going with me. Now, recent escalations, right? As of July 9, which was 2 days ago, tariffs up to 50% on copper and goods for countries like Brazil, about 35% on Canadian imports, starting on August 1st, 30% for South Africa, plus 10% for being involved with BRICS. These tariffs cover a range of things, right? I just want to summarize the tariffs for you. The tariffs cover steel, aluminium, cars, copper, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and some more rates, you know, as well as some tariffs are set to, well, some certain, tariffs will reach as high as 200%. You're hearing it here. I'm speaking about American dominance on the world now. It will reach as high as 200%. And I hope the ANC is ready to deal with such, right? Now, economists have obviously warned of a cost push inflation. And for South Africa, there's the risk of our GDP dropping by 1% this year because of these tariffs. Now, you've got to ask yourself, if tariffs of 30%, right? And the 30% was not considering the extra 10% which Trump is going to add, right? The 30% tariffs are calculated just for this year without the 10%. It's predicted, right, that that will cost South Africa about 1% of its GDP. How many months are left of this year? 5 months. But when do the tariffs start? The tariffs start in August. You do the maths, and you realize that by the end of Trump's term, if we still have the racist ANC in charge, where on earth will South Africa be? Especially with us taking loans from IMF, with us facing a huge debt conundrum that we have. South Africa's economy is going to shrink because of this. Now, moving on to one of the main issues, right, that we have in this country, right, which is obviously NHI. Now, NHI is another issue that is going to hurt South Africa. It's an issue that a few Western countries have come out against to say that we should still allow for private healthcare providers because our state is not capable to provide world-class healthcare. Some states have come out and said this, right? And it's been Western states because, well, ANC somehow believe that we can buy Mediclinic and we will provide the same level of healthcare that you used to get with your medical age, which is bull. It's bull. It's never going to happen. The bottom line is this NHI system, which is NHS in other countries like the United Kingdom, has failed in countries such as Canada, the United Kingdom. I mean, the US, you pay for healthcare. You pay. This thing of trying to hurt white people, or forcing relations, because there's this narrative that white people have got money, they've got medical aids, they go to private hospitals. Let us just go and get a bunch of black people just to go and be with them at the private hospital. Hence, we should get NHI. That's the real narrative. That's the real narrative. You should not believe any other cuck narrative they try to come with, right? So that's bull. It's never going to work. It's a crazy idea. It's ludicrous. It's not going to work. Now, explaining this NHS to you, NHI story to you, is in places such as the United Kingdom, you've got people that are waiting for months to see doctors. It takes people months to see gynecologists. It takes people months to see pediatricians. And even when they get to see these doctors, they've got a limit of 15 to 20 minutes, right? In countries where NHS has been implemented. And these are Western countries. Mind you, I'm a Western fan. I'm not attacking the West. Understand me where I'm trying to go to. Canada is the same story. Healthcare issues, Now, South Africa, we don't have paracetamols in our hospitals. Simple tablets such as Panado aren't available. The government cannot afford medication, therefore they go and buy generic medication, which is obviously cheaper. And we've got cases where people are sleeping on cold floors. And to a large extent, black people sleeping on cold floors in government hospitals. And surprisingly, they still vote for the ANC. Shocking. You just can't make this up. This is it's unbelievable. Unfortunately, and I don't want to derail, but just have to say this: Black people have got an abusive relationship with the ANC. And they've got a very abusive relationship with the ANC. Black people's relationship with the ANC is like, you know, my gosh, my husband was so good while he was my boyfriend. He used to spoil me, but now that he's my husband, he abuses me. But because he was a good boyfriend, I'll keep him around. That's the relationship that black people have with the ANC. Cool, they fought apartheid, which is not really true, but we'll give them credits. They fought apartheid according to them, and we still vote for them. So this NHI is supposedly